Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Medicaid Monday for December, our holiday edition. This is our current roster of attorneys, and we are Piero, Connor, Strauss, and Hemming. And for those that don't know, Frank Hemming is our newest partner, who's made partner this year in 2024. So that's one of our updates for everyone that isn't aware. So we're very happy to have Frank on in a partnership capacity. And we're going to be talking today about a number of things, but this is what we've been talking about for the last 11 months. So these are the topics that we have covered on Medicaid Mondays. And you can always find the videos for Medicaid Monday at the address there. You can link to it, purolaw.com, Medicaid Planning Videos. And each year we try to start with an update. So in 2025, give you a little spoiler alert, we'll be doing the new numbers because each year Medicaid updates and we get new eligibility numbers for income, assets, et cetera. We'll be covering that along with other updates that we're anticipating in 2025. And as you go through this list, you'll see that we covered Medicaid home care, nursing home care, Medicaid asset protection trusts, spousal rights, navigating home care, finding care and paying for it, which has become kind of the holy grail of Medicaid home care planning. And we talked about the home care applications, financial and the NIA eligibility requirements, the potential, we'll talk a little bit more about this today, for 2025 look back period. And recently we have talked about the consumer directed personal assistance program and the litigation that's currently pending on that. And most recently we had Rebecca Prevey on from the New York State Area Association on Aging. She represents 59 counties, and she went through a great presentation on all of the non-Medicaid services that are available in New York State. And we would highly recommend that you take on that and take a look, because the feedback that we received from Becky's presentation has been phenomenal. And if you didn't see it, it's something you may want to avail yourself of. So, gentlemen, families are gathering. Time to sit around the tree or the candles and have some crucial conversations. And Aaron, this is something that our families sometimes can engage in, but sometimes they have great difficulty.
Yeah, it's easy for us to talk about because we talk about it every day. It's really true.
Yep.
Some people never talk about it. I'm seeing less and less of parents who never discuss anything. I think that mentality is slowly going by the wayside, but there certainly are a lot of people who restrict information to the next generation or whoever their beneficiaries may be. And maybe there's a good reason for that, but most oftentimes there's not. And sharing of some information can really be helpful, because when people come in and they haven't been let in, they're already in a stressful and difficult situation, and without some knowledge and without documents, right? That's a big part of it too. They're really behind the eight ball.
I think the old thinking was, let them worry about it after I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
The problem today is you don't go away.
Right.
There are a lot of things that happen to you before you die that put all of this in center stage. And Frank, these are the clients that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis in the Medicaid planning practice area. And very often they're not thinking about the things that happen during lifetime.
No, and I can't tell you how many times we've had both, I think, positive and negative experiences with different levels of knowledge. We've had conversations with people where the kids come in, they've been on all the accounts for years, they know where all the documents are, they have all the passwords, they know the financial advisor, they know the accountant, they're talking with us, the attorneys, and everything kind of just starts taking off when something's happened. Conversely, we've also had plenty of people walk in saying, I have no idea what mom or dad have. They would never talk about this. Now they're in the hospital, they can't help me. I'm just trying my best to help them. And it's not that we can't help families when they're in such a situation, but it's so much harder because you don't even really know what you're dealing with or what they're going to find once they get access to the information. And half the time it's trying to figure out how do they even get access to the information and the ability to do anything with it once they have it.
And that's a problem that families come in with all the time. I don't know where anything is. Does mom have a power of attorney? Does dad have a healthcare proxy? Where are the assets? How are they titled? How can we get anything together? Because as you know, Frank, there is a very detailed and rigorous list of information that you need to file a Medicaid application.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff hopefully isn't gonna be the biggest lift. You know, it goes from everything with your personal identifying documentation, like your driver's license, your birth certificate. You know, families usually have some idea where those things are. But then we get into the 5 years of records if it's a nursing home situation, and what have mom and dad been doing with their money? And it's not uncommon, like where we've had families where there might be some cognitive issues going on.
Yeah.
We've had elder abuse potential situations going on. And the kids, as much as they want to be helpful, they don't really know what's been going on in the finances for the past few years because they haven't been involved with them. They haven't needed to be.
Yeah.
So then you're just uncovering kind of just issues potentially. And sometimes everything works out fine. It's just sometimes they don't. And then we have to kind of just do the best we can with the situation that we're presented with.
So these are some of the reasons, Aaron, that people don't engage in this. And I hear this, it's none of their damn business. It's just the way it is.
It's really nice at Christmas.
But it's hopeful that you can find ways to navigate and find ways to break down barriers and to get through these conversations. And there are really 4 questions that are the key questions to ask. And the first question shouldn't be, what do you have in money? You know, where are your assets? How much money do you have? Don't start there. You know, sooner or later, if you're going to file for Medicaid, you have to get those answers. But
Right.
there are other things to do.
Right, like who are the beneficiaries on these accounts? So number one is where do you want to be, right? And that answer is usually pretty easy. As I've said, I've only ever had one client who said, I want to go to a nursing home. So almost every time it's been home. How you pay? Well, I'll let Frank talk about that. But I think who is going to take care of you, right? You need to have this conversation because more often than not, there's a child who thinks that they're going to take care of you and move in. And maybe that's what you want, but maybe it's what you don't want too. So you really need to have a good, long, hard look at that.
I think one of the other things that we talk about is if there's reasons that people aren't being included or treated equally, it's usually important that mom or dad are the kind of the ones that break the news to the family as to like what they're doing, why they're doing it that way. It's not saying again that you start the conversation with those things, but Aaron, I mean, how many times do you have a litigation situation that maybe could have been avoided because things should have been said and weren't, and then people found out about what's happening down the road?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Sometimes there's a reason not to say, but it does not set up for a successful plan. But the best way to have a successful plan is to have the necessary legal documents in place, right? And the longer and sooner that you have those documents in place, the more likely that they're going to hold up. So that's a big part of it as well.
And be prepared, because they're gonna find ways to skirt around the issues at times and not want to deal with these kinds of things. And so many people, and you see it in different family dynamics. If it's a husband and wife and one of the spouses needs care, the other spouse in many instances will mask the need for care, will give answers that are not accurate answers, and will say that, oh, everything is fine, I can take care of it, I can handle it. And what we see is that sooner or later, that health of the caregiver spouse comes into question, and they end up in the hospital with pneumonia or with a broken hip because they fell trying to take care of someone. And then the whole care plan shifts into a very dramatic crisis phase. So try to get over this one. You may not need it now, but let's talk about the what ifs. Let's talk about what if mom or dad can't be the caregiver. Who's going to step in? Who's going to be next in line? And you know, they may not want you in their business, but talking about these things doesn't have to be gloomy. It can be hopeful that, you know, you have children that are willing to help. You have people that are willing to step in. There are resources that we can access for you.
It could be a very positive conversation if framed correctly.
Yes.
I've never once heard it's like, man, mom and dad were so likely because they did nothing and everything just turned out exactly like they wanted. Because they actually took the time to set the plan up and then things actually went as they planned for.
Yeah, planning is the key, and we can't emphasize that enough. And if you take the time and you do the work to get a plan in place, you win. And Aaron, if you don't, you lose.
Correct. And losing is multifold, generally speaking, right? That you generally then have to pay us a bunch of money, right? People don't like that. We know that. But if you plan, it will be much more cost effective. If we have to end up in a courtroom because there aren't documents in place, or we are then seeing someone come in and exploit people for their own gain, which happens more and more every day as we see more and more people have cognitive issues and be susceptible to that, frankly.
And this is planning for the future. It isn't necessarily planning for today or even tomorrow, but one of the things you can try to emphasize is we need to get educated, we need to get information, we need to get to the next level and put a plan in place, because this is planning in advance, not reacting to a crisis.
This is how we keep you in your house, generally speaking,
Right.
right?
Being able to stay at home is a goal for most people. Identifying their strengths and abilities and the resources that they have is so important, and build that into the plan, not just a financial plan, but a care plan. And, very often people don't take seriously what their children tell them.
Sure.
Even if the child is an elder law attorney, the parent may not listen to them. But very often they will listen to other professionals who may have an opinion that is different from just the family's opinion. Hearing it from someone who is qualified, and I think our next slide talks about that a little bit. And Frank, you are eminently qualified. So.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting with this. I mean, I use my own life as examples at times. Like I have elderly grandparents. They live in Florida. They are thousands of miles away, and I have difficulty explaining to them why I want them to be doing some planning. And I think that if they asked anyone, am I good at my job, I would hope they would say that I am. But on the other hand, when I tell them what I would recommend that they do, it's one ear out the other most of the time, or it's many conversations, and it's kind of pushing and prodding. It's trying not to overstep. It just kind of it's a give and a take, and it's not always because that they don't want to listen to the family or the person they talk to. It's just sometimes that message needs to be received from somebody else. So I know we have on the next slide, we talk about care managers, but sometimes like we bring in other professionals when we're dealing with an overall situation, because sometimes it's not necessarily the message itself that is going to change, it's who's delivering that message. And if they haven't worked with somebody like us, with an elder law attorney, you want to make sure that you're actually going to somebody who practices in elder law, Medicaid, trusts and estates, because I mean, I don't have to speak for either of you. I can't tell you anybody the sheer amount of times where I'm looking at documents that are performed just by a general practice attorney or somebody who kind of delves into this realm from time to time, where things just aren't set up well. Like we recently have a case where we have a very sick husband, a very healthy and capable wife who's willing to help him. They just updated their documents and they went to a different firm that doesn't do the types of things that we do. And husband's still first on all of our documents, and he can't really serve in that role. And that would have been a conversation that would have been pretty paramount in the conversation if we were having them, but it's not really setting them up for success. So now we have to have more conversations with the family of now updating and redoing things that they just did, because in my opinion, they just didn't get very good advice.
So whether it's Pierre O'Connor and Strauss or another elder law firm, the key is find a firm that does this on an everyday basis, that's filing Medicaid applications on an everyday basis, doing the planning, doing the trusts. You don't want someone who's dabbling. You want someone who does this and can do it consistently and appropriately to make sure that they're leaving no stone unturned and all the angles are covered. Care coordination is something that I'm pretty passionate about. I think that having another team member that is a non-lawyer, a social worker or a nurse, RN, PT, OT, someone who is looking at this, and there's the Aging Life Care Association, ALCA, and they do all of the things on this wheel here. Each piece of pie represents a valuable service that these professionals can do. We can do a home visit. It's not something that's cost effective for the client, but a care manager can do a home visit and do a very thorough assessment of all of the needs in the home, the family's needs, what each family member can bring to the table as a caregiver, what resources are available in terms of health insurance, Medicare, Medicare supplement. things that we get into, but the cost effectiveness of having a care coordinator do that versus a lawyer do that, Frank, is good for the family.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we have our expertise in the areas that we have expertise in. I just literally left the meeting with a very nice lady whose husband is unfortunately getting very, very sick. Is going to need some hand holding with a lot of setting up services and talking about options. And while I could certainly direct her towards some options, whether that's moving to keeping a home care plan in place like she has, or moving essentially up to an assisted living level of care, or transitioning ultimately to a nursing home, people like our care managers that we use all the time, they're so much better qualified to do an assessment, figure out the appropriate level of care, maybe do some forecasting as to what the care continuum is going to look like as time progresses, and just set them up for success. And I think that one of the best piece of information that this person left with was knowing there is somebody that kind of fills in all the gaps with all of these issues that she brought to our attention that we're not just overly well versed in helping. And that's somebody like a care manager.
And a lot of people think that there is some agency in the sky.
Yeah.
That they can just pick up the phone and call a phone number, Aaron, that they're going to get all the answers that they need from one phone number and one source. And those phone numbers are out there, but they don't give you the service that a family generally needs.
Well, we still see a number of people think that they're going to go to the Department of Social Services and get the answers they want to hear.
Yeah.
Which, if you have any resources financially at all, it's a really bad plan. Some of them will send you to us.
Yeah. I was gonna say, we have been seeing that they will at least make referrals at times
Yeah.
to go speak with somebody like us to help kind of coordinate the plan and make sure that you're set up for eligibility and for an approval. But I can't speak for every office. I'm not sure that that's happening in every one of them. So it's entirely possible that they would just accept an application and just immediately deny it and not give you any reasons other than you're not qualified.
And, the internet can be a wonderful resource, but it can also not be a wonderful resource. So you can't really believe everything you will read online as well. So you need to be careful about that.
So assembling the right team is critical. And I can think of different scenarios and different situations where people have come in, having gone to a DSS office and been told, oh, you have to liquidate your IRA, which is bad advice. It's the wrong advice. I've also had people come in and say that, well, I went to the nursing home and they offered to file the application for free. And, then I don't have to pay a lawyer to file my Medicaid application. And then, okay, well, how much in excess resources do you have? And they told them just to spend it all down. So they're spending $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 where they wouldn't otherwise have to spend that all down. They could save probably half, even at the nursing home level. So having the right team and the NIA assessment process has added the value of care coordination. Once upon a time, this Christmas time, right? Ghost of Christmas past. We used to file a Medicaid application. I used to do it when I was a younger attorney. I would carry the box in with all of the 5 years of financial records. Back then it was 3 years. I went to 5. And I would go in and I would sit down with a DSS caseworker. We would go through the file. They would take it. They would issue an approval. And then they would turn it over to somebody else, the county health nurse. And the county health nurse would go out and do an assessment and turn it around and bring it back and award the appropriate hours of care. And then the services started. That's not what happens.
That sounds beautiful. But yeah, that's not just how it works anymore. No, we try to lay this out as distinctly as we can for our clients, but the first hurdle is the financial eligibility. It's getting through that county DSS office, it's getting that approval. But then you're scheduling your NIA assessment, you're then getting your independent physician's visit and all those things. And then if you need a high level of care, you have the panel that you have to go through. It's all the things that we've had the past Medicaid Mondays about, but it's nothing like what Lou just described. And on top of just the overall steps that are needed, it's the amount of time that it takes to get through all those different doors and clear all those hurdles is frankly staggering to most people. And if they don't have a good guide along the way, a lot of people just either get lost along the way or they just fail and they give up.
And for those of you using the consumer-directed personal assistance program, you're probably right now wondering what's going to happen to that program. Governor Hochul has taken it to the point where PPL, which is the organization out of Georgia, is being onboarded to take on 280,000 clients that are now run through 350 different consumer-directed agencies. And it's going to be done with a single company routing all 280,000 applications and managing those consumer-directed policies and right through to the day-to-day payroll. So March 28th is the cutoff date where everyone has to re-enroll. You don't have to re-enroll by January 1st, but you will have to re-enroll by March 28th. We'll see how this all rolls out. There's 5, maybe 6 cases pending, trying to enjoin, one of them trying to enjoin the enforcement of this contract. But this is what's coming. We're anticipating that the need for coordination and the need for advocacy is going to skyrocket as the CDPAP program rolls out because so many people are dependent upon it. So keep your eyes open. We'll be doing more programming on CDPAP. Certainly when we get to the Elder Law Forum in May, it will be a main topic of conversation, seeing how the new contract is being rolled out and enforced. But we just had Brian O'Malley on our Life Happens radio show. And Brian went through all of the current status and state of affairs. If you want to get that show, you can also go to purolaw.com. That will be podcast probably by Wednesday, and you can get that. But let's quickly just talk about fundamentals. When you're having this crucial conversation, Aaron, there are 4 documents that we advocate.
True. Really, the first 2 are the most critical in this process. Having someone to make a medical decision for you, right? A lot of this is a medical decision, although it's tied up with a financial decision as well. Most critical for us is really that power of attorney and a well-drafted power of attorney with some gifting authority. You may think that that's a bad idea, but it's really a good idea because the alternative is spending your money down to the government and
Or
most
going
of the
to a
times-
guardianship,
Right.
which that's our alternative.
Right. If there's enough money to justify that, right? So that's a financial decision as well. Most of the time, we're gifting either between spouses or onto your beneficiaries, usually children, but it doesn't have to be, obviously. So those are critical documents, and generally, you'd rather have your money there than with the government. A will and a disposition of remains are certainly important, but less important in the Medicaid context. Obviously, everyone should have these documents.
And if you have a will, you're in probate and your assets are not protected. So we have both revocable and irrevocable trusts that we advocate for. Revocable trusts have a whole host of uses. One of them is that Medicaid can't go after assets in a revocable trust. Their only recovery is against probate assets. So avoiding probate has a double bang for your buck if you're using Medicaid. Sometimes we do spousal refusal, and a spouse can have assets in their own name in a revocable trust, pass them on without having a right of recovery there. So all of these things flow into the trust planning, and having a trust gives you so many more advantages than just having a will. And in the Medicaid context, it is absolutely essential. And I will tell you this, that I've been practicing for 41 years. And for a good portion of that time, I've done Medicaid trusts. They really came into being in 1993 with federal legislation. They have not been tinkered with. There have been cases, court cases, class action lawsuits. There have been fair hearing decisions in 2024 that have upheld the use of the Medicaid trust. In my estimation, gentlemen, it's just a matter of time before the government gets around to turning its sights on the ability to shelter assets in these trusts. But what they have always done is grandfathered in the use of trusts that have been created under existing law. So even if you're not near the point where you would need long-term care, this is planning and locking in your trust with the flexibility that can be built in is absolutely critical to get out in front of those potential changes in the law. So where do you want to live? We talked about these earlier. Who would take care of you? $200,000 a year is the rough estimate on the current nursing home costs. Home health care, if you need 24/7, can be even more. And what most seniors think is that Medicare is going to pay for all this, and just know that it is not. If there's one thing to take away, that Medicaid is the only program that will pay for long-term care costs, whether they be given at home or in a nursing home. Medicare is not a player in this game. And if you read the tea leaves, what's going on in New York due to budget constraints with the CDPAP program, you might have heard we had an election in November, and the new administration has basically put its sights on Medicare and Medicaid and promised that it's going to take social programs, including Medicare and Medicaid, out and attack them in ways that we don't know yet what the details are, because they have a concept of a policy. They don't have anything yet that we've seen that's tangible, but we're anticipating further Medicaid cuts and Medicare cuts. So getting out in front of it and preparing is key. And Frank, these are the numbers that we live with today.
Right, but as the bullet over there on the side says, these will be updated in hopefully just about a month or so, just depending on when they release them. But we're not anticipating wide scale changes to these. It's probably much more in line with just your regular cost of living increase. Because we did see that huge jump during COVID, where the asset limit jumped from 16,800 up to just about 30,000, and then it further went up from there. So, stay tuned with us for next month once we release this new information. Right now, again, your assets are about 31,000 if you're a single person, 42,000 if you're a couple. Still significantly higher than just about anywhere else in the country.
Except California. Because California last year repealed its asset requirement. So in California today, there is no asset test for Medicaid eligibility. Major change out there. New York tried to follow suit and do the same thing, but it didn't get through the legislature. They had a lot of support for that. Didn't get through. So now we're looking at these as the New York levels. Again, $2,000 in almost every other state is the asset cap. $2,000, not $31,000 and change here, $31,175. So California is the only place that assets are not counted. Every place else is, and this is New York's version. And we have two different programs, Aaron, that we have to deal with.
Correct. So most people are familiar with the nursing home 5-year look back. Okay, that's a facility. It's a nursing home level of care. It's not an assisted living. Okay. There are very few assisted livings that actually are put under the home care model because, we like to do things that don't make a lot of sense when we do these things, and make Medicaid laws. But most assisted livings do not take Medicaid, but those that do are under the home care rules, which currently have no look back. But the look back has been coming for several years, and I think we're getting closer to that point.
So we have, betting is a big thing now. You can bet on almost everything. What's your bet, Frank, that Medicaid home care penalties and look back will be enacted in 2025?
I think my hesitancy on making a prediction most of the time is based on not necessarily their desire to do it. It's more of what would be required from the system to actually implement it. Because we're seeing delays in all the county offices. We're seeing, shortage of staffing in just about every industry. And I think there's a lot of unanswered questions as to how such a look back would be administered and actually would roll out and be successful if they were to implement it. Given the change in the elections and everything, or the results of the elections and everything, I think it's much more likely now than it was just a few months ago to say that if they're going to do this, I think it is much more likely that they will do this now in 2025. So the more that we hear, the more that we will share on these programs. So by all means, again, please come back with us next year.
And if your goal is to stay home for the holidays and be home for the holidays in your future, know that New York State policy is pushing against that. And we've been having internal conversations recently because the system is being designed where you go and you apply for Medicaid home care and you don't get service for 6 months. Due to all of the assessments, this new assessment process. And Frank, where does that put people?
Behind the 8 ball most of the time, because as much as we try to get the word out that you want to plan in advance, you want to have all your ducks in a row, you want to set up your trust, there's just still so many people that haven't done much or if any planning. And when they come to us, it's because the house is already on fire. And unless you're in the select group of people that can not only apply for immediate needs, but actually get it approved and then have caregivers available, there's just very few options now to get the care turned on very quickly.
Well, they've now stacked that even better, right? Because you can't get care unless you assess for care, right? So it's not something you can do proactively.
Right.
You have to be pretty far down the need road before you're even going to be.
Yeah, we have plenty of people that come in and say, well, I want to apply for Medicaid now, and when I need it, I'll just start using it. It's like that's not how this works, right? You have to be in need of care to need it, whether that's you're assessing to a home care level of care, if it's at home, or you're already in a nursing home, right? You can't apply for a nursing home until you're in the nursing home. So like you said, Aaron, they've stacked the deck against that as well.
So is the promise of home care evaporating? New York State has been a tremendous state supporting home health care, but is New York State policy now promoting premature institutionalization? Are we seeing more people having to go to a nursing home. And there's another factor we haven't even talked about, and that is the staffing shortage
Mhm.
and the inability to find agencies that can staff your case. There are not enough aides out there to employ. So what's the program that's grown to 9.5 billion over the last 10 years?
Consumer directed,
The Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program.
which is under fire now.
So now they want to squeeze that because it's been too successful and people are using it to their advantage to hire people that can actually be in the home and provide the care and not have to worry about an agency showing up one day, not showing up the next. Some agencies are great, they're wonderful, but there is a mixed bag there. So when you have consumer directed and the agency can't staff, you can hire your own aides and manage them. And that's something that is now seriously at risk and in jeopardy with 280,000 people having to convert to the new program and the new single fiscal intermediary, the SFI. Learned a new term on Saturday. So the SFI is coming, and all of the other agencies are getting out of the way at this point in time, based on the governor's
I think
directive.
we could come up with some other terms for it.
Yeah, well,
It's a family show.
it is. It's the holidays. So we won't tell you what we really know. So Frank, kind of lead us through this. What should people be doing now?
I mean, if you can get some information about, the general like outline of things, I think it's a good thing to see if there's an avenue of discussion there. But again, be respectful. Don't start with how much money do you have? Am I on the accounts? Not the best way to handle that, as we talked about. Just figure out if there is, and if there is hesitancy there, see if there's a way to get the information at a different time. Even if that let's just get a power of attorney now, and if I need to get information later, at least I have the document that's able to do that. Figure out who your decision makers are going to be, whether that's going to be putting people together, putting people in an order, staying out of the family, and picking other people to kind of promote harmony. That doesn't always work for everyone, but that is a strategy that some people employ, and let's not pick any of these people. Let's pick outside people, and then depending on your situation, certainly get out in front of or get educated about doing a Medicaid asset protection trust if you have things like a house, a brokerage account, life insurance, things that you want to protect long-term, that if you need long-term care is there set aside to go to the family, regardless of what happens with your health. And more importantly, as Aaron was saying, get your power of attorney, your healthcare proxy, get those in place. You should always have a will, regardless of kind of what other circumstances you have. And a disposition or remains appointment never hurts anybody because it just ensures somebody is there to make your final arrangements if you don't make it during your lifetime.
And your ashes get scattered where you want them to be. So just one other addition to that, the way that we can design the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, a lot of people come in thinking I have to run to my kids every time I want money. And the way the plan gets designed, once they walk out the door, it's like, oh, I wish I had known that 5 years ago. The way you know that now is to come in for a free consult. And we sit down with our clients, we go through all of their information, we draw diagrams to show them how the entire trust plan works. Once people see it and get to know what the law really says, they get a comfort level with it. So it's something that should be done sooner rather than later, getting the flexibility and being able to handle your planning and get the care that you need with every arrow in the quiver, as we like to say. And Aaron, getting started is getting peace of mind.
That's right. So there's no time like the present, or whatever other saying you want to say, but it doesn't get, in my mind, it doesn't get fresher, right? So if you wait too long, you can really be in a quandary. So get it done early, get it done while the laws are still more favorable than less favorable.
So next year, we're looking forward to, and it is going to be 2025, and Beth's here with her head in her hands because she didn't update the slide. But that's okay. We're not perfect. She's not. The rest of us are.
Hey.
Just kidding. It's the holidays. Give me a break. So January 13th next year, 2025, Frank will have all of the new and updated Medicaid numbers. They come out end of the year. We'll put that all together for you, give you the summaries that we always do, and our Medicaid guide will be updated for that program, so you'll get it all fresh and have a clean slate of data and information to counsel people that you work with on a day-to-day basis. The Elder Law Forum coming up on our 30th year. It's pretty amazing. And May 15th is the date if you want to put that on your calendars. We will again be having a series of speakers from the legislature, from the State Office of Aging, Department of Health, from people that are in different agencies, different providers, insurers, trying to pull the whole system together in one day of conversation to find solutions and ways forward. Because right now, the age wave that Ken Dykewald predicted 50 years ago is upon us. Baby boomers are aging at 10,000 a day. And the systems that have been built, Medicare, Medicaid, and the healthcare systems are collapsing under the weight of this increased population. So we need new solutions. We need to face this problem head on. And hopefully you can join us for the Elder Law Forum. And at this point, Beth, any last questions for 2024?
Yes. For someone whose capacity is diminishing but currently has a POA signed when they were competent, is that enough, or does a guardian need to be considered?
Aaron?
I'm sorry, can you read that again?
Yeah, if for someone whose capacity is diminishing but currently has a POA signed when they were competent,
That's all that
is
matters.
that enough, or does a guardian need to be considered?
No, generally not, as long as it's a good power of attorney. It's a durable power of attorney, and that's what it means, right? So it means that once capacity is waned, it's still effective as a legal document. So assuming that there's a backup, the person in place is competent to act as an agent for that person, and it's well drafted, the answer would be no.
One exception.